All right. So thanks for the intro. I love being part of this group. I moved back to Perth at the start of this year, and this meetup is my favourite thing. So thank you everyone for running it. Feel pretty lucky to get to present this. So this story started at another Perth event in February this year, because most good stories start when you're in community, surrounded by people sharing ideas, and you riff off each other and get talking and hear things that you haven't heard about before. And this one started at Perth Web Accessibility Camp, and we can thank a Fenders member for these slides. I got up and I got to give a talk here, but I was surrounded on either side of my talk by two people who were completely blind giving their talks. One was Zell, and she talked about the general principles of web accessibility and the 4 principles of accessibility, or she said POUR because it's an acronym, P-O-U-R, that web pages should be perceivable. You should be able to see what's on them, and you should be able to, if you can't see, you should be able to hear. You should be able to somehow perceive what's on a page. They should be operable. Anything you do on the page should be able to be done by any person. They should be understandable and not incomprehensible, and they should be robust. They should work no matter your environment, no matter how flaky your internet connection is, all that kind of thing. It was pretty cool. It was a really good talk. She gave some great examples. She stepped through using a screen reader on the Breast Cancer WA site as an example of something that was good, and I was still like, man, screen readers are hard to use. But she went through those, and that was really cool. After her, Aisha, I think that's how you say her name, she got up and she presented showing Microsoft's Seeing AI app. Has anybody used this? No? You have. You work at Microsoft. You have to. Seeing AI it's available for Android and iPhone, and it's this incredible app that uses machine learning to assist people who can't see on their own. You can point your phone and it gets camera permissions, and then it uses Microsoft's machine learning stuff. You can point it at a sign and it will read out what's at the sign. You can point it at a person and it will say the approximate age and gender that it guesses for that person. You can point it at a sheet of paper. It will scan the paper and then read the document out to you. It's pretty impressive. They have used AI to make something that works a whole lot better than traditional support mechanisms for people who have poor eyesight. And I was sitting there at this event, and I had just watched someone use a screen reader and realizing how hard that is, and seen this really cool technology using machine learning going, wow, what could we do? And I was like, I have an idea. Can we use this tech to make the web more voice friendly? Can we do better than screen readers? Can we come up with something? And I really had no idea where to start. It was just an idea. But I wanted to find out if you could create something that was so good that people who aren't blind would want to use it. Is anyone here used a screen reader? Have any of you used it for not because you're testing it for a client? Nobody. Okay, so screen readers are not good enough that you want to use them unless you really, really have to. But if you really, really have to, you want to. Has anyone seen stairs like this before? Yes? Can anyone notice anything that's slightly weird about them other than looking like they're out of an Escher illustration? They're accessible. They've got that ramp that goes all the way up. And I found this book in this illustration in Accessibility for Everyone by Rachel Neighbours. And she talked about how this design was created so that the wheelchair users don't feel like they have to have this separate bolt-on metal awful looking ramp when everyone else gets a beautiful aesthetic, nice to look at set of stairs. So this architect created these stairs, and the idea is it's wheelchair accessible while still having normal stairs for people who want it. Most people don't notice, but in the end, when they actually opened this, it wasn't just the people on wheelchairs that found it helpful. There's also people on strollers, people who are carrying bikes, people who had prams. By making it more accessible for those who had disabilities, they actually made it more accessible for everybody. It's universal design. It's not just designing for the edge cases, it's designing for everyone. Could we do the same thing with voice apps? So instead of screen readers being something that you only use if you really have to, could we make them something where it's friendly enough that it turns out to be beneficial to all sorts of people, like people who are driving a car and shouldn't be looking at their phone, or people who are cooking dinner and don't want to have their laptop next to the steam because the steam might get in the laptop, but they want to hear what's going on anyway. Can we make the web voice friendly? Some of you might have seen this before. It's been 50 years since this was released. Since we first had a science fiction writer and movie producer give us an idea of what it would be like to talk to computers. Has anyone heard this?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Yeah. Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. There was this AI intelligence that it basically, anyway, part of the story, but AI that you can talk to is always menacing. Is the message from the past, and it seems to be true today. More recent TV show. This one, Mr. Robot. Has anyone watched this? Yes? It's an example of Alexa.
Alexa, when is the end of the world? Unless it collides with a very large rock or if future technology goes very wrong indeed, Earth is most likely to be destroyed when the sun swells into a red giant in several billion years' time.
Yeah. Those are the kind of things that they're keeping with the ominous tone, the reason that we don't trust voice assistants, the reason that we don't trust robots that can talk. They're always going to be slightly evil and slightly obsessed with humans being destroyed. But this kind of reminds me of what I don't like about Siri and Alexa and those products at the moment. It feels like they're just very token. They can set a timer, they can play a song, but they don't necessarily allow you to do much beyond that. They have a few gimmicks like that, like you can ask Siri funny questions and there's funny responses, but they're not, compared to what's on the web, it's just so limited. So I set out to find out what can we do to make websites more voice friendly. I had no idea, so I searched for web voice recognition. This is how all good research starts. And I thought it was weird. The first one was nothing to do with web standards, which wasn't promising. But the second one, voice-driven web apps, introduction to the web speech API at developers.google.com. That sounds promising. And then I noticed the date. Can anyone read that? 2013 in January. So it's 5.5 years ago that this technology was introduced. Why haven't I heard of it? That's why I haven't heard of it. The browser support was Chrome only and nothing else. But speech recognition is only part of web speech APIs. That's when the computer listens to you. There's also speech synthesis, where the computer talks to you. Turns out that's got really good browser support and works everywhere, including Edge, not IE 11 and back, but no surprises there. Pretty good though. Yeah. We still have users using it. We're trying to phase them out. I'm hoping that...
We punish them by not making things accessible.
Yes. If you can end of life it before 2022, I'd be appreciated.
They don't like to speak those words.
Okay.
But they just punish them.
Slow punishment. So, the first part of this API, speech synthesis. The page can speak. Basically, when you start doing a demo, you'll find this demo on MDN. You get it to say stuff like, Fenders is cool, yay.
Fenders is cool.
Oh, now we're talking. You can choose different voices, like Alex.
Fenders is cool.
Yeah, if you want to say something in
Fenders
a
is cool.
But we were in Italy recently, and all we were saying a whole bunch of the time, senza glutine. That's,
Senza glutine.
yeah. Gluten-free in Italian. You need to say it a lot when you're over there and can't have gluten. The API for it is a bit... You can look at this later. I can post my slides. But basically, there's an API, and you get the things you want to say, and you put them in tokens, and you say one token at a time. So you get the voice that you want, and then you get the voice to speak something by giving it an utterance. So one token of text is one thing that you say. You don't give it an hour of text because Chrome has a bug where it cuts out after 15 seconds and will never play audio again if you do that. In the same way, Chrome was the only one that, it's kind of ironic that Chrome was the only one that does the listening correctly, but it's the only one that does the speaking incorrectly. But there's this example. It's pretty easy to follow. You get it to break things up. it's fine. This is what I was trying to show. So you can get the voices, you can pick from different voices, say something, and then you speak it. And if you can't get it to say multiple things at once, you can only get it to say one thing at a time. If you call speech synthesis.speak 2 or 3 times, it will add things to the queue and it'll say one after the other. So it won't talk multiple times over the top of itself. I didn't really appreciate the normal API for this, so I went and created a JavaScript library to make it a bit easier. I called it Vocally. And instead of all that code you saw before, you can just have a chainable thing like this where you can say hello, then pause for 0.5, and then say something else, and then things like that. And you can get it to read out what you're saying as you speak it, so that if people have their sound down, there's still a chance to hear what's going on. And so that demo...
Hello. My name is Karen, but you can call me
The computer.
Yeah, so you get to have some fun, and that's pretty, it's pretty easy to chain things together, get it to say things, change the voice it says it with, add pauses, that kind of thing. So you can also get it to read out stuff. Have any of you been reading Mandy's blog posts about Semantic HTML? Always. You all need to go and just scroll back in the Slack channel and click on all of them because they're all really good. There's one about TypeScript. There was one on CSS tricks today. But one of the things she's been saying is if you use the correct semantic elements, the HTML is useful in contexts you didn't imagine. So you might have just been thinking about what it looks like in a browser, but if you use the correct HTML, it can be used elsewhere. And in this case, we can use the correct HTML elements to begin to read out the article and speak to you. So this is just HTML I scraped off some news website.
Opinion. If we want a future with driverless cars in it, we need to learn to trust the technology.
And so it's just reading...
Posted Friday the 6th of July 2008.
And so the code for that was super simple. It was just literally find the article and then vocally.read article. And then it goes through and you can actually begin to do stuff. It's not perfect yet, it's a work in progress, but this library, my hope is that we'd be able to get it to read web pages in a really interesting way. And then from there, instead of requiring a keyboard like a screen reader would to interact with it, we could actually start to get the page to listen as well. So speech recognition. How do we start when the browser support is that bad? That's the question. Do you just build for Chrome only, or do you do something else? The good news is you've got sites you've got people who are working on this. So Mozilla has a project called Common Voice. Who's heard of this before? Mandy has. Yay. You should all go to this website. I think it's voice.mozilla.org. All the voice recognition stuff is done by machine learning, training it on lots of audio files. And you go to this website and it gives you a sentence to read out and you add your voice and your accent and your idiosyncrasies to their training. And so that their AI will eventually get much better at hearing people and hearing people like you. So you can go and add yourself to this training data, which is pretty cool. You should all go do that. Mozilla's working on this. They're committed to shipping a feature where they'll support this API, and it's coming along pretty well. In the meantime, Microsoft, go Microsoft for sponsoring, their Bing Speech API works on all browsers, including IE11, and some kind soul has written a polyfill. So you can polyfill the speech recognition stuff using Bing's APIs. So it's commercial, you have to pay for it, but if you want to build an app that uses this stuff, the tech is out there, and if you've got a commercial ability to pay for it, it's there, and hopefully they'll support it as a standard soon as well. So Google's doing it, Mozilla is actively working on it, and it's coming together.
It's free for less than 5,000 transactions per month.
Free for less than 5,000 a month. That's good to know. So I should use that to set up a demo and show people how it works.
You should just use the try for free.
Try for free. I think I did click that and then haven't continued on, but I got far enough to check that the polyfill works, and it does. So how good is the speech recognition? Who's used awful speech recognition software in the past? Has anyone noticed that Google especially seems to be getting better at it lately? Yes, if you use Google like Assistant or you use Google Maps and you click the microphone icon and say an address, it's getting pretty good. So how good is it? It's pretty fast. It gives you the results, and it actually gives you several versions of the results and gives you the confidence of each one, which is that number in brackets. Pretty impressive, hey? So you get these draft results streaming down, and it's pretty fast, it's pretty accurate. It's not perfectly accurate. You do get some amusing errors, which I won't go into. Some of them are quite rude. But it's better than you'd think. And the part of taking your voice and turning it into words, that part is a ridiculously hard problem that computers are well on the way to solving. And if this isn't solved enough for you now, I feel like within a few years, it will be completely solved for at least most common voices, most common accents, which is pretty exciting. So the part about taking those words and figuring out what to do with them, we're still hopeless at that. That's the hard part. But I thought that was pretty encouraging. Like, that works surprisingly well. That's not what I want. But there are some amusing mistakes. Alexa, remind me to feed the baby. Defeat the baby. Yeah, it's again, their obsession with killing humans. You can't get past it. This is a video I did of me trying to do Chrome and Mozilla side by side. So Mozilla is actively working on this feature, and by scraping GitHub profiles of Mozilla engineers, I happened to find an API that didn't require any authentication to use and showed their voice recognition in progress. This is a comparison of speech recordings. The one on the left is Firefox. The one on the right is Mozilla. I meant Chrome, but... Wait, I mean the one on the right is Chrome. So you can see that Mozilla's is not quite there yet, but it's getting there. It's evolving pretty quickly. They're devoting engineering effort to it. They're crowdsourcing people to help add to their machine learning data set. This is going to be supported at some point, I swear. When I started, the first time I gave this talk was in June or July, and at that point I had not seen any of this stuff from Mozilla, and the Bing polyfill didn't exist. So the browser support is actually improving at a pretty fast pace, which is exciting. So can we actually use this stuff? Will your users let you use this stuff is probably a fair question. So when you go to use this for the first time, you'll get a warning like this, same as when a site asks for push notifications or if a site asks for access to your location, access to your microphone. If you start requesting this stuff from the user all the time for everything, like anytime they visit a blog, it starts asking for your microphone, users are going to get pretty annoyed and they're going to start disabling it for everyone. So if you're going to use this, use it thoughtfully, think about sensible places where you can add it in your site. But once they've said yes, the way you do this, it's a speech recognition object and you create one of those. You can choose whether you want continuous results or whether you just want to get one. You can choose whether you want to receive the draft results or not. That's what interim results is. You can do other languages. If any of you have used the app Duolingo, this uses this API to see if you're speaking French or Italian correctly. It's accurate enough that that's how they work it, which is pretty impressive. And so you can specify all this, and then you use events. So recognize a .start, and then you add an event listener. You'll get a result event. The result event has all the data about the stuff that's coming through, and you get the confidence of how correct it is. And that's the demo I showed you before. I searched around trying to find if anyone's built really cool libraries about how to use this stuff. I found this one, which seemed pretty promising. It was called Artyom.js, and I'm going to skip over it because I was wasting time. But what I learned is that any library that claims that it's going to compete with Alexa or Siri or something is probably overselling itself. And it's just not that effective. But there was some cool APIs you could come up with. I'm going to skip this and show you what I did with my Vocally library. I tried to build an API where you could give commands and alternatives of commands and then just give a simple callback, like having it say, hello, and where am I, and what day is it, and things like that. Hello. Wait, is that? Oh, I apologize. There's some issues where it won't listen if you're not on a secure connection, and I forgot about this at the start of the thing. It's a good thing that I have a video of this. Hello.
Honey.
You can respond to commands. One of them is, where am I?
Camp.js.
I had tonight's one saying Fenders instead, but
Sunday.
it's a Monday. It's pretty impressive, really. But you can get it to respond as soon as it hears the drafts, and you can like do things like that. I thought it was pretty fun playing around and seeing what's possible. But at the end of the day, I feel like there's a chance for voice APIs to go really wrong. Like if we don't follow these things we started out with. By adding this stuff to our web pages, are we making them more perceivable, more operable, more understandable, more robust, or are we making them more confusing, harder to work if you don't have a microphone on your device, if you can't speak, if you can't hear, if you don't have your headphones on you? If we're going to make this work, it has to keep these things in mind. And the great thing about the web is covering multiple mediums at a time. So we don't want to go and build stuff where it's all just voice APIs. Does anyone remember sites like this from the late 90s built with Flash? If you had to guess, what on here is the clickable link? The company name?
I reckon it's the entire mystery meat thing in a diagonal.
That's right. All of those are links. So the whole thing, you can click on any of them and they'll take you somewhere, but you have no idea what's clickable. You have no idea what your options are. The word you use, mystery meat, is right. You have no idea what you're getting, and it's probably ground up like cow foot. That's the reality of UIs where you can't actually, you don't know what's available to you, where it's not perceivable, it's not obvious what's there. So how do we do those things with a voice API? Good examples are things like, this is in WhatsApp. They've just added a little microphone icon. And so it's really obvious it's right next to the text area. Instead of typing, I can click that and just dictate my message. Thought that was a good example. I started thinking about what we've got at work and how it would work on a page like this. Would you get it to read the entire thing from top to bottom, or would you get it to read just the top and then stop at the action and say, get started, and are you ready to click that? Would you make it so that you can say, get started no matter where you are on the page, and it will find a button labeled get started and jump to it? There's a few things you could do that would probably be pretty easy. How you actually fill out a form when you've got comments, you've got multi-selects, you've got rating bars, you've got whatever. They're harder questions. How you'd show data that is usually visually explorable, and how you'd let someone explore that if they're not looking at the screen, that's a good question. And as for data visualizations like that, I've just got no idea, but I feel like this whole industry, or like our industry, is going to be able to do voice APIs, voice interfaces. We've got the chance to do it. It's up to us to figure out what the best, most accessible way to do that will be. So this talk started with the idea, can we create a better screen reader? I think the answer is we probably could. The APIs are there, the voice recognition is getting good. If you're not setting out to build an API that can do everything, talk to everything, talk back at you, and do like one thing to rule them all, like Siri or Alexa tries to be. If you're just setting out to give a reasonable interface to interact with your existing web pages using standard HTML elements, I think there's a chance that we could build something that's really good, that wouldn't just benefit people who can't see, but would be easier for a ton of people in a ton of different situations. So that's where it's at. Where do we go? I guess we're waiting for better browser support. I think there's better libraries could be made to make this easier to do. I'm working on this. If anyone wants to join me and do stuff with it, I had a few people when I presented this over East said they'd like to help, but if there's anyone in Perth, I'd love to collaborate and do something cool. And then figure out if we can build a better kind of screen reader. That's the next step. Can we actually bake this into a browser so that it's there from the get-go, it's a user agent that you trust, and do something really cool with it? That's cool. We're hiring remote if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you.